there are objects that seem completely lifeless. But inside them lie curses that have slept for centuries. Touch them and you die. Stare too long and you lose your mind. And whether you believe it or not, history has recorded countless deaths, accidents, and madness surrounding artifacts that appeared to be nothing more than ordinary items. In this video, I'll tell you the stories of 5 of the most famously cursed artifacts, and the one at the very top will leave you truly stunned. The Hope Diamond, a curse in blue. There are things that should never be found, not because they are too dangerous, but because they never truly belong to the world of humans. The Hope Diamond, a flawless masterpiece, bearing a cold blue like the deep sea, so beautiful it hypnotizes. But few know that anyone who has ever possessed it has never escaped a tragic fate. The story began hundreds of years ago, when the stone was removed from a statue of a deity in an Indian temple. It is said that the god was desecrated, and since then, the diamond carried a curse. The first to steal it, a French merchant, was soon torn apart by wild beasts in the cold forests of Russia. Everything started from there. The stone gradually made its way to Europe, and then into the hands of the French royal family. King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette once wore it at grand ceremonies, until both were dragged to the guillotine, ending in blood and chaos during the Revolution. It is rumored that when the blade fell, the diamond momentarily turned a deep, dark purple. After that, it changed owners constantly. A nobleman stabbed to death by his lover. A ballet dancer who fell from a balcony just days after boasting she had touched the Queen's diamond. An American tycoon who gave it to his wife as a token of love, only for his son to die in a car crash, his daughter to take her own life, his wife to go mad, and himself to die in ruin. No one held onto the diamond for long. No one lived in peace after having it. In 1958, a man named Harry Winston, also a jeweler, decided to donate the Hope Diamond to the Smithsonian Museum. No ceremony, no media. He wrapped the diamond in a cardboard box and sent it through the mail. Since then, it has rested behind thick glass among millions of visitors. But some still say when you stand close enough, you might feel the air grow colder, your heartbeat slow, and something staring at you from inside the stone. Maybe the curse has ended, or maybe it's just waiting for the next person to come close enough to awaken it. The Egyptian mummy, the curse on the Titanic. There are curses that need no blood, no knife, only the stare of someone dead, whose eyes were never closed. The story goes that at the end of the 19th century, a team of British archaeologists uncovered an ancient tomb deep within the Valley of the Kings, the resting place of Egyptian nobility. Inside that tomb, they discovered the mummy of a priestess, preserved almost perfectly. On the sarcophagus were strange hieroglyphs no one dared to translate aloud. One of them, a young officer, took the golden mask placed on the mummy and brought it back to London. And then, things began to happen. Within weeks, 3 members of the expedition died under strange circumstances. The first from a mysterious illness. The second fell down the stairs and broke his neck. The last, the officer who took the mask, disappeared without a trace on a rainy night. The tomb was hastily sealed again, but the mummy never returned. A year later, the sarcophagus and mask were sold to a wealthy American collector. For unknown reasons, he changed his mind at the last minute and had them placed aboard the most luxurious ship of the time, the Titanic, to be transported to New York. That ill-fated voyage, everyone knows the end. But what few know is that the box containing the mummy was in cargo hold number 3, the first section to flood. When recovery teams later reached the wreck, they found twisted steel and broken crates. But the sarcophagus was nowhere to be found. No one knows where it drifted. Since then, the story has spread throughout England that the Egyptian curse followed the icy water and awakened. That it was the mummy with eyes wide open who brought Titanic down into the moonless night. Sounds insane, doesn't it? But what chills people to the bone is that after the sinking, Everyone connected to the artifacts purchased from librarians to warehouse staff and night guards died or went missing within 6 months. No one has seen the mummy since. No one dares look for it. And to this day, there is no official record confirming that the mummy existed. Only the rumors remain, and those eyes, still open. The crying boy painting. There are paintings that make people cry, but there are also paintings that burn everything around them to ash. In 1980s England, a strange story began to spread. A series of unexplained house fires. Each crime scene looked the same. Fire spreading fast, burning everything. Furniture gone, roofs collapsed, walls blackened. But one thing was always untouched. A single painting, unharmed, not even scorched by smoke. A portrait of a crying boy. At first glance, it seemed ordinary. A boy, about 5 or 6 years old, tears running down his cheeks, looking straight at the viewer with a sorrowful gaze. But the more people discovered the painting at fire sites, the more the rumor grew. Then a name appeared all over the newspapers: the cursed painting. A group of investigators, skeptical of the supernatural, traced the origin. They found that this was one of thousands of mass-produced prints sold across England during the 1950s and 60s. The artist, an Italian painter named Bruno Amadio, had worked during World War II. Some said he once witnessed an orphanage consumed by flames, and the boy he painted was the sole survivor, a child who became silent and strange after the tragedy. Another, more chilling story claimed that the boy in the painting was Don Benio, a child cursed, who brought fire wherever he went. After the foster home that took him in burned down, no one dared adopt him. Eventually, Benio died in a car accident, consumed by flames. 1 year after his death, the first painting appeared. People started to believe it wasn't that the painting didn't burn, but that it absorbed the fire, destroying everything nearby to protect itself, as if a soul had been trapped inside the layers of oil and canvas. A radio station once dared listeners to send in their crying boy paintings to be burned live on air, and they did, in a sealed steel furnace. No one ever spoke of the results. But weeks later, the radio station burned down during the night, cause unknown. The painting, despite being burned, was found in the ashes, not fully destroyed. Since then, anyone who owns the painting is warned: either hang it carefully and never disrespect it, or throw it away as far as possible. But no matter how many are thrown away, the painting always comes back, as if it refuses to be forgotten. Robert the Doll. In Key West, Florida, a place that seems filled with sunshine and ocean breeze, there exists a doll that receives hundreds of apology letters every year from people who dared to offend it. His name is Robert, an old doll dressed in a sailor suit, nearly the size of a real child, harmless in appearance, but with button-black eyes that give anyone who looks at them chills. And Robert isn't an ordinary toy. He once belonged to a boy named Eugene Otto in the early 20th century. People say Robert wasn't bought from a store. He was given to Eugene by a Haitian servant, just before she was fired. Some claimed she practiced ancient voodoo, and the doll was a gift, carrying a silent revenge. From the moment Robert appeared, the Otto family began to hear footsteps at night. Furniture would move, toys were destroyed, paintings slashed with a razor blade. Every time, Eugene, just a little boy, always said, "It wasn't me. Robert did it." At first, everyone thought it was just imagination. But then neighbors began reporting they saw Robert move on his own from one window to another. Some swore they heard giggling in empty rooms. And Eugene, the older he got, the more reclusive he became. He kept Robert by his side even as an adult, until he died in that very house. Some believed Robert wasn't just a doll. He was the second soul living inside Eugene. After Eugene's death, the doll was moved to the Key West Museum. But the story didn't end. Each year, the museum receives hundreds of handwritten letters. Not fan mail, but apologies to Robert from those who had taken photos without permission, who had mocked him, laughed at him. They wrote of accidents, breakups, bankruptcy, misfortune, just days after visiting. Some letters, trembling with regret, say, "Please forgive me, Robert. I shouldn't have disrespected you." Robert still sits there, behind glass. If you visit, remember to look him in the eyes, ask permission before raising your camera. And if you happen to speak ill of him, pray that Robert didn't hear it. The execution chair. At a small inn in the village of Thirsk in northern England, there is an old wooden chair that looks harmless. No carvings, no decorations, but it hangs suspended on the wall, nearly 2 meters above the ground. Not for display, but so that no one dares sit in it again. That chair once belonged to a man named Thomas Busby, who lived in the 18th century. He was executed for murder, and according to legend, just before being taken away, he shouted a curse. "Anyone who dares sit in my chair will die." At first, locals thought it was just the ravings of a condemned man. But then the deaths began. A drunken soldier sat in the chair and died that night in a horse-drawn carriage accident. A new chimney sweep rested in it during his lunch break and fell from the roof to his death soon after. Even during World War II, British airmen challenged each other to sit in the chair before missions. Those who did never came back. The story spread. The inn changed owners. The chair remained, and the curse quietly struck down anyone who laughed at it or dared test it. Some said that when they sat in it, they felt a coldness up their spine, as if something passed through their bones. Others died shortly after in accidents, strokes, or simply vanished without explanation. Eventually, the pub owner grew terrified and begged the local museum to take the chair, but they refused unless it was hung high out of reach. Since then, the chair has hung silently in the Thirsk Museum. No one dusts it. No one polishes it. The museum staff won't even go near it. No one knows if the curse is real. All that's known is, the chair has never spared anyone who sat in it. Maybe you think, it's all just coincidence. Or maybe we're simply trying to explain fear with logic. But if one day one of these artifacts appeared before you, what would you do? Would you dare to touch it? If you find these kinds of stories fascinating, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss what's coming next. And tell me in the comments below, do you believe in curses? Or do you think it's all just a terrifying coincidence? I'll see you again in the next dark story.